back to Unsolicited Advice, brought to you by Toxic Bubblegum. I'm Bubblegum.
I'm Toxic.
And today we're talking about that thing I don't know how to pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce anything in this podcast.
We're talking about fictional languages today.
Yay!
We've had this on the list of topics to cover forever, and I've had a rough month, so Alan is being nice to me and letting me geek out about language for, a podcast.
And I'm like, I'm, you can't see it, I'm very pretty.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, wearing my corgis. It's good! We're gonna have a good time.
It's gonna be a fun time.
So, let's get started. How are we doing this?
Instead of having an opening quote today, we have a dedication to Mark Okrand, David Peterson, Paul Frommer, and especially to Victoria Fromkin. And these are all people who have careers in building fictional languages.
God, that should be you.
It should be me. I hope to be the next one. But I do have, and I said especially Victoria Fromkin, because for those of you who don't know, the first person ever paid to create a language for a work of fiction was a woman.
That's exciting.
She created Paku for Land of the Lost.
Ooh. Also, nice name. I love the name Fromkin.
Yeah.
That's, very nice.
It's 1974.
Jesus.
And, yeah, she was the first one to have that as a career.
That's so cool.
Yeah, they did not use Paku on the show nearly enough.
Awkward.
But it turned into a thing. Mark Okrand had a career in it. He did Klingon and Vulcan, and of course Atlantean for the kids' fictional language.
Of course. You gotta.
You have to. And obviously, David Peterson is my current idol. Because he was making Monty Python jokes in a language he made up on HBO for hundreds of thousands of people to watch. Which I just think is great.
I mean, that's the dream, right?
Yeah. It's good. And Paul Frommer also is a person. I have a lot of respect for him. We're not going to be talking about him nearly as much as the other guys today, because he created Na'vi, which I am not interested in speaking on the podcast.
What the
So
fuck
that's
is...
where we're at. That's what they speak in Avatar.
Oh.
I just don't like Avatar. That's where we're at.
That's fair.
Still an impressive language. Not diminishing his work at all, but I am not going to do Avatar on the podcast. That's where we're at.
I don't even remember any, even if we wanted to, I remember literally zero things about Avatar. So.
That's fair.
So now I'll know zero things, but without having seen the things. I mean, I've seen the things, but I didn't study them.
But you have seen most of these things that we're going to be talking about. So,
take it away!
Yeah, so part one is fictional languages, which I refer to, and what we're calling this episode is Conficturalinguistics. It's not a real word. It's a term that I made up to be a sort of umbrella term for everything that falls under fictional languages, regardless of category. It's derived from the Latin word confictura, which means fantasy, imagination, and fiction.
And then fictional languages are what we're referring to as subsets of constructed languages. They also fall under the subset of priori languages, and can be referred to as artistic languages, or more precisely as fictional natural language.
Yes. It's important to note that in this terminology, fictional refers to the word that refers to the world that the language is spoken in. I can't speak in English today. And not the language itself. Many of these commercial languages can be learned and spoken. So the languages themselves are not fictional. Worlds and settings that correlate to such languages are referred to as conworlds, a mirror of the linguistics term conlang.
And with this, we'll also be talking about alien languages, which is a specific subset that applies to languages spoken by extraterrestrials, which can also unofficially be called xenolinguistics.
Which, and here's my fun fandom fact for part one, is what Taranga Mundo got her degree in.
Ooh.
That's Leela's mom from Futurama.
Of course.
So there you go.
It's not complete if we don't have one Futurama reference.
Yeah, we've got to get that in there.
Because we've had so many of those on the podcast.
I love those.
That's
why I do a podcast.
We won't be covering visual languages because this is a podcast.
Right.
So we can't do that.
Although I will point out that Alienese is a real language from Futurama that can be learned.
Oh my god, of course it is.
It's a visual language.
So
we won't be talking about it,
but if you wanted to, you could.
We are mostly going to be focusing on commercial languages, which are fully developed languages that you can learn. So we're also going to be... I'm not going to be talking a bunch about Star Wars languages.
Mm-hmm.
They exist, but they're not fully developed. And this is... Yeah. We had to make cuts somewhere, and I started with things that are not full languages and ended with Avatar. So...
Very nice. Alright, so let's start. What is this word that I'm seeing right here? Posteriori.
Posterior.
What does that mean?
Okay, so the priori language, which regard its most... Oh, we're in part 2. Welcome to the media segment.
Here we are.
So, yeah, most fictional languages are priori languages, which means that they are written sort of... They're, like, from scratch languages. A posteriori language is a language that is derived from another language.
So, like, something that's built off of English.
Yeah.
Versus something that you make.
Right. And there's always going to be a little bit of crossover, but it's talking about, like, majority portions.
Right.
Especially with fictional languages, because there are a lot of things that are made to reflect real-world things. Mm-hmm. So having... Like, High Valyrian is considered a priori language, even though it technically would be the equivalent of Latin.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some things that cross over. But
like, there's a difference between, like, being the equivalent of and being directly adapted from.
Right. But the first 2 languages that we will be talking about are posteriori languages. Because we're going to be talking about literary tie-ins.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
So it looks like the first one we're talking about Newspeak.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from George Orwell.
Mm-hmm. This is from 1984.
What?
Crazy.
Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words with which to express it.
Yes. And this...
thought crime.
We're talking about this because this just shows the importance of linguistics on any kind of context and how it ties in. Mm-hmm. Newspeak, for those of you who didn't read 1984, was just condensed language. And they were, as you thought against Big Brother, that mm-hmm. obviously was a thought crime, but they wanted to eliminate it altogether. So they were just, like, editing English down to a point where you would only be able to think and say the things that were allowed for you to think and say.
Right. That's fucked.
Yeah.
A little bit.
1984 is scary.
It's a little too real.
It's too relevant.
But let's not get caught up in that. We're having a good time.
We're having a good language time. So our other posteriori language is Nadsat. Anthony Burgess, and he's actually what inspired today's podcast. I've been reading his book, A Mouthful of Air, which mm-hmm. is just about language. Oh, he was a linguist.
That's fun. I didn't know that.
Before, yeah, he was a teacher. He was mm-hmm. like fluent in a bunch of languages, and
then he decided to just put a fucking bunch of syllables in short words!
And then also...
Because he hates me!
Clockwork Orange happened. For those of you who didn't check out our pre-video podcast,
God!
Alan got really mad at Nadsat.
Yeah!
But our Nadsat quote, "A terrible Grozny Vani world, really, oh my brothers." That's good. And it's actually derived from 2 languages, because it is English and Russian.
God. I can see, now that you say that, I can see the Russian influence.
Yeah.
As it turns out.
A lot of NADSAT words are Russian slang.
As soon as you add the V's and the Z's in there.
And now as we move into other languages, I'm going to be reading a thing in a foreign language. Alan's going to translate it. And we're just going to... I have a quote from each of the foreign languages that we're, like, talking about. Which is most of the commercial languages. There are a few exceptions. There's no way that I was going to try Simlish on the podcast, so I'm just going to let you know now that's not in here. But if you want a good Simlish experience without paying for the Sims, I highly recommend you look up Na 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 in Simlish.
That's what we're doing after this podcast.
Gerard Way is apparently a big Sims fan.
Oh my god, I would be!
So,
oh my god.
And it's not just a simulation, it's been translated. It's like the legit... It's good.
Stop. Oh my god.
But I'm not gonna do it on the podcast, that's where we're at. So yeah.
Let's hit the ground running. It's Sad Rabbit time.
Yeah, it's Sad Rabbit time. We're gonna talk about Lapine from Watership Down, created by Richard Adams. Sante atha mujerer con zilante hre uvarama heponis. My heart has joined the 1,000, for my friend has stopped running today.
And the quote's sad. Everything's sad. Sad rabbits.
Also, I meant to do this before we said the first sad rabbit quote. I have a disclaimer. I only speak 2 of these, so pronunciation a little bit shaky, probably. Particularly with Lapine, because there's a lot of
yeah.
Consecutive consonants.
You want to hear it pronounced really badly. Saint E Atham, who hare can zahlante hare you varama hyonis. How was that? I think good. I did really good.
Yeah. Very phonetic.
That's what I'm here for.
So our next one, we've got Klingon. We've got Kaplach.
Success!
Yeah, it's good.
Kaplach.
Vulcan. We've got Nidroikinator.
I'm sorry.
I'm also sorry, because I'm sure that was not correct. Yeah. So, moving on to games for a moment. Hopping over. We've got Denis, which is from the Myst series.
Ooh.
And it was hard to find a quote in that. Renaziten kinan kateshi trelanok kevoth rub regalten kenon recostan so devote.
The reader is entertained by the journey of another, but the writer is the changer of worlds. Jesus Christ, okay. Calm down.
I won't.
Okay, I get it. You want to play God for a little bit. That's fine.
That's what being a writer is. It's playing God for a little bit. And then we've got Skyrim. We've got Dovazul.
Ooh.
Tinva Kai Dovazul.
Do you speak the dragon language? I'm afraid if I say any more, I might glitch into the floor.
I might glitch into the floor.
It would be terrible. But amusing. And that's why they're still in business.
I'd get a picture and we could use it as our thumbnail.
Oh,
glitch into the floor real fast. Okay.
I'm back. Does it say anime on there?
What? Yeah. Anime.
Tolkien has the power of God and anime on his side.
Yeah, so we've got Elvish, which is actually broken up into multiple dialects. So, bear with me here. We've got Sindarin. Anirne heberari I shenlin ni imaldres nuthant I berthir ein.
She wanted to protect her child. She thought in Rivendell you would be safe.
We have the Quenya. Nea Vaxia Racelia Totu Noto Karinar.
May your blood-stained horn fall against your enemy's head. Ooh.
You can learn, even without context, even without getting into, like, Silmarillion territory, you can see a lot about the cultures and the people who speak the dialects and the quotes that I chose. We have Kuzdil, Ishkathari Dorgnol.
I spit upon your grave. That's a movie.
That is.
Hey, we got a horror movie fan.
We also have Black Speech. We have Gukibum Kelamishi Borzum Ishi Aka Gumishi Ashi Garum.
There is no life in the cold, in the dark. Here in the void, there is only death.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to point out Rhetoric is also a language. I don't have a quote from it. They were, like, all of the quotes that I found that were canon were, like, one-word quotes, and no.
So what's the, which one does Legolas speak? What's the country boy accent?
The country boy accent, I believe, is Sindarin.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's what it looked, that was like, yeah, that seems correct.
Yeah. So that's where we're at, and it's this, while we're on Elvish, it's just a good, because we're going to be talking later about how languages tie into world building, and it's just important to note that the more elaborate the language, the more it can reflect the world. Having different dialects in a thing is very impressive from a linguistic level, and then also, like, we talked about it in world building, where, like, the more history you have, the more there is for people to, like, tear apart. And Elvish is a really good example of that, you guys, because there's a lot to unpack.
Tolkien was like, I'm rich, I can do whatever the fuck I want! I don't know, Tolkien actually got rich off the series, actually.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact, he is one of the first recorded people to do, because before Victoria Fromkin, creators who wanted fictional languages just did it themselves as, like, a passion project, which is, like, an example of what Tolkien was up to.
That's what Tolkien does.
That's what Tolkien does.
Also fights the devil.
Yeah. That's important.
I'm not going to give context to that.
That's
Continuing on!
And then we have Dothraki, Anhavezdak Yeron Tharat.
I will let you live.
And High Valyrian, Valerio Muno Angos Nurizisa.
Valyrian is my mother tongue.
Yes. And High Valyrian is also one that you can dig into. I didn't bring up different dialects, because they all more or less, when you're learning the thing, they're all pretty much, they sound alike if you read them out, because it's, like, all the same. Like, in Elvish, I butchered the pronunciation for everything, but you could kind of tell that there were different palettes and stuff in there.
Yeah.
High Valyrian, it's all pretty much the same, so if you're not a native speaker reading it out, it sounds a lot alike. But there's, like, Bravosi and Gisgari and Astapori, and then there's, like, the highborn dialect and the lowborn dialect in each of those places. Bravosi is very inspired by High Valyrian, and it to the same degree as Elvish, I would say, is very complex.
There's a lot fucking going on in the world,
but I speak,
as it turns out,
like, second grade Valyrian. I'm like a little baby Valyrian speaker.
Can you say, I colored this by myself?
I cannot.
Shit, dude.
I can say I attacked this by myself.
Well, same diff in Game of Thrones. I was gonna say Gang of Thrones.
Gang of Thrones.
That's something that exists.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna look it up. I don't want to
know. So yeah, those are languages, and they really, there's something obviously you don't need to invest your time or money into having a language created for a world, but if you have a passion for linguistics, that little difference can really add something. And there's also something to be said, because High Valyrian conceptually was a language before the show was picked up and they hired David Peterson. Dothraki conceptually was also a language. They hired someone to do the full-fledged language for the show, but George R.R. Martin knew enough about the culture and enough that he only had to come up with, like, 10 words in foreign languages, and that was enough. He came up with, like, Valar Morghulis and Valar Dohaeris, and those are, full languages have been developed, and those are still the things that we know. So it's not as hard as it seems like it would be to go that little extra step and have, or, like, if you have, this would be way easier. It wouldn't be like a full linguistic adventure, but taking words from other languages, like taking words from Latin and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that J.K. Rowling does. All the spells are Latin. And
it's all about taking what you have at your fingertips and modeling it in a way that's going to enhance your story in making the world feel more real and more, it has like a concrete culture to it.
Right.
Sort of thing.
And there are times when having that language can make a big impact, which is how we're going to wrap up the media segment. I want to start that. I want to talk about Jason Momoa.
You always want to talk about
It
Jason
says in our
Momoa.
notes that I have a fangirl. I wrote our notes, but it says that I have a slot allocated.
Yeah, you have an allocated slot to fangirl over Jason Momoa, which, I mean, like, that's fair.
So one thing that this is actually, because I'm a big linguistics nerd, it's actually one of the things that got me so invested in Game of Thrones. That's why I talk about it on the podcast all the time. Also, Jason Momoa didn't wear a shirt at all that season. Just saying. Season 1 of Game of Thrones is great. But there are a lot of characters who, and I think, because Dothraki is the first one that you really get to see, so it definitely leaves more of an impact, because it's while you're still trying to figure out the world and stuff. But there are characters in Game of Thrones who never speak English on the show.
Yeah.
And it's like, the amount of detail, even before I knew that I was gonna, like, stick out, because gonna level with you, I didn't know that I was going to stay with Game of Thrones until the first dragon showed up. I made it through, like, a season where it's like, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah, I remember, I feel like we talked about it before, but when Game of Thrones first started, you did not want to be a part of it at all. You were like, I'm not doing that shit.
Yeah. And then, like, even once I started, it's like, I don't know about this. But, one of the first things that did really impress me about the show is because when you're over in Essos, there's, like, a whole group of people who are speaking in a language that didn't exist at the time. And it's like, that's crazy. And I think Jason Momoa, because he speaks the most Dothraki on the show, because he never speaks English on the show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't think Khal Drogo ever spoke English.
You get you get all of his character development through this fictional language, and it was amazing. It was just, like, so impressive. And it's one of those things, Daenerys speaks, like, a lot of different languages on the show, but you get to see her in the common tongue. You get to see her, like, speaking English first, and you get to know her character, and you get to sympathize with her, and then, you already have that background context when you start having to read subtitles for Daenerys.
Right.
And Jason Momoa never had that. All of his acting, everything came across as very genuine, considering that it was a language that had never been released to audiences or anything before, and it was very well done. Jason Momoa is very talented. I actually have an example of this also, if you want to do one more translation thing with me.
Let's do it.
Here for the so the context for it's season 1, episode 7 of Game of Thrones, and Daenerys there was an assassination attempt made on her life. There was a wine merchant who was supposed to go over there and poison her, pretty much. And also, just really quickly, I want to talk about his dialect, because it was before we had seen High Valyrian on the show. And he's speaking Dothraki when he's at the market in a High Valyrian dialect, which is
absurd.
Like absurd world building for the 7th episode of a show that they didn't quite know was going to land at the time.
And also, that's not something that happens that often. That guy showed up once.
Yeah, he's literally only there in this one episode of Game of Thrones, and he's, like, in the market, and he's just, like, shouting wine, wine, which is Mericora in Dothraki, but he's shouting out, and he's like, Mericora, Mericora, and it's like, it's a dumb little side thing.
Yeah.
But you can obviously tell, and before I knew anything about the language, I actually thought he was speaking in High Valyrian, because it's just subtitled.
Right.
So you don't really know, like, what's going on, and it's just, like, a fun little extra mile that they went really early on in the show.
they committed to it.
Yeah. But there's been an assassination attempt on Daenerys, and there's, like, I think the best example, both of the linguistics and of Jason Momoa acting phenomenally and being shirtless, is he gives like a soliloquy in Dothraki at the end of the episode where he pretty much, Daenerys had wanted him to take over the Seven Kingdoms and he wasn't interested in it, but then there's this assassination attempt and it fails, and he goes in and he checks if she's okay first, which was like one of the more gentler moments that we see from Khal Drogo, and then he erupts into like this really angry speech, and I only have like the first couple lines. If you're interested in language or acting, I highly recommend you can just look up the clip, but Marishak ani vejfina saja rashaseri man anha valoshak ash aka man anha vajak jin edor shakethi fina neva ave mezame.
And I assume that's what here. And to my son, the stallion who mounts the world, I will also pledge a gift. I will give him the iron chair that his mother's father sat upon.
Yeah. And it's good. It was a powerful moment.
Strong.
It launches into, like, he goes through, like, a whole battle plan at the end, because he's committed. And you can tell it, like, it's good acting, it's good language building, it was good.
I was just thinking about him shirtless.
And also that.
It's really good.
It's really good.
I need to stop having these moments on YouTube. This is not the first time. Cat.
Jason Momoa. I don't know what it is.
But yeah, it's real good.
Yeah.
I should watch that.
We should maybe watch that clip.
Again, I mean,
we should watch Game of Thrones over again.
Yeah.
Before the new season.
Oh, we got a lot of watching to do.
Yeah.
Whoop.
And then my last, Game of Thrones thing, just to talk about here in Dothraki, we have... And also because it's Valentine's Day, you guys.
Oh.
When we're recording this. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's
just
Day.
To elaborate a tiny bit more on the culture, because Dothraki, they don't have a word for love. Terms of endearment are all idiomatic in Dothraki, and the most common example of this on the show is obviously love between significant others, and we have Yershak Masharakiani.
Yar Jalin Altahari Ani.
Yeah. And the fun thing about their matching phrases, and so you say a different thing to a man than you would say to a woman. I know they have gay relations. I don't know how that works linguistically. But anyway.
You like to know.
Oh, but they translate literally to the sun of my life and my moon and stars. So, which is like a nice Dothraki thing. It's good. Because they believe that the moon and sun are lovers. They believe they're gods.
They're like getting it on during the eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, that's my Game of Thrones thing.
Shit, dude.
Yeah.
Here we are again.
Language is good, you guys. Game of Thrones is good. Jason Momoa, good.
Fair. That's a fair point.
It can also be used, and this is less about the language itself, but having languages that are established in a world, even if you don't use them or see them, can be a really good way to do, like, foreshadowing and or exposition. A really good example of this would be Parcel Tongue from the Harry Potter series, because Harry can talk to snakes, but you don't know that Parcel Tongue is a language until the second book, after he's already talked to that big snake.
Which, arguably, I don't remember it so much in the book, but I remember that scene is so cool in the movie. Like,
Yeah.
It's fucking sweet,
It was
dude.
good.
But yeah, it's, because it's one of those things where it's like Harry talks to the snake in the first book, and like everyone's like freaking out because there's a fucking snake out and about, but then like you sort of, as the series goes on, you learn more about how knowing how to speak parcel tongue is like not a good thing.
Yeah.
And it like raises the whole mystery of how the fuck does Harry know parcel tongue?
Right.
And the way people react to it when they find out he can speak parcel tongue, and
yeah,
it's just like it's a nice thing.
It's good. It was like a good, and you get to learn, and it's because Harry doesn't have like a magical background. He grew up with Muggles, not knowing he was a wizard, and it was like, it was interesting because you got to learn as he learned, because he was like, that's weird that I talked to that snake, and then he learns he's a wizard, and he's like, oh, so it's a magic thing. Yeah. And then like he's talking to snakes in the second book, and he's like, because it's like a magic thing, we're wizards and we can talk to snakes, and everyone's like, no. That's bad.
We can't do that, Harry.
It's good. J.K. Rowling has also mentioned that because Parseltongue's also unique in that it's more like a genetic thing than it's passed down. It's not a language that you can learn. It's a language that you can imitate, because Ron does.
Yeah.
But he couldn't, like, there's no way that Harry could teach him how to speak to snakes.
Right.
He can just imitate sounds and hope for the best. That's it. That's our Parseltongue.
I speak Parseltongue.
And then atmosphere, also.
Yeah.
It's good for atmosphere.
As it turns out, when someone's speaking a different language, you're like, oh shit, I'm in a different place.
Yeah.
This is a different place. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say those words.
Can't do it. I don't know what that means.
What?
Need my subtitles here.
God.
It's good.
All the time.
And that, even if it's a language you can understand, that was one of the big things in Clockwork Orange and the adaptation in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was very atmospheric.
Because you were just like, what the?
Because, like, you can figure out Nadsat from context clues.
Right.
But, like,
when you pair it with the visual medium of it.
Yeah, whatever.
So seeing it happening and as it's being spoken.
Yeah.
It's a whole other experience.
So you.
Me.
You.
I'm here.
What... Have there been any languages that have, like, really impacted, really added to a story for you?
I mean, Dothraki is really good. Like, a lot of the Game of Thrones languages, I think, are really well done. It really, helped to diversify the world in, relation to the culture of it. I've always really liked Klingon. I think Klingon's real cool. I started with Star Trek The Next Generation, so, I was more exposed to the Klingon.
Yeah, there was...
From from an early point in the series, literally the beginning of the series.
I was gonna say, there's, like, more Klingon in Next Gen than...
The original series, yeah.
That's what I was thinking, and then it's like,
Worf
maybe more than any of them. Someone go through all the Star Trek series and count how much Klingon is there.
Huh? But yeah, well, I always remember, like, because they had, like, because Worf's son was also there.
Yeah.
And so, like, the episodes with the both of them, I really liked. That really stood out to me. Is it sort of, did build how different their culture and language and everything was from the rest of the crew. It's
a good way to do that.
It's very good. I like it.
Klingon did it very well.
I should watch Next Gen again.
Yeah. That's good.
Let's all watch Star Trek, guys.
Alright. I'm in. I'm game.
Woo!
Here, are you ready? I wasn't planning on doing this, but here's like a Klingon lesson.
Oh,
for
teach
you.
me.
We talked about Nuknek. And then if you also learn the reply, the blanket reply, which is Deutsch vom Vinek, and point, you can basically navigate in a Klingon environment. Like, not well. You won't know what people are saying to you, but the response is, I want that thing.
Right.
So if you just do that and gesture, in theory, you could survive on a Klingon ship.
It'll be great.
And then you duck when anyone yells fire, pretty much.
Right, I mean,
that's like a safe,
that seems like a safe sort of bet to make.
It's good. Klingon's a really good one. That's a lot of people's, like, introduction into fictional language. I feel like there's also...
we're all nerds.
It's also the only one that you can study professionally.
I love that.
You can get, like, a degree in Klingon.
What?
And that's a thing that they don't offer to... I've been trying forever to find a program that will take me to study fictional languages broadly. My dream degree would be Conficturalinguistics, and it's not... They don't teach that anywhere, but there is a Klingon
cowards.
Language Institute.
Oh my god.
So that's like the closest.
That's delightful.
It's good.
I love that. So now it's time to move on to our not tutorial
Yes.
segment.
Part 3 is not a tutorial, but and this is just like tips and tricks and stuff for if you want that extra element. Doing a full tutorial would be first of all, it wouldn't be advice, it would be a tutorial, so it wouldn't be on this podcast specifically, but
right.
also it would be much more detailed. But we're gonna teach you like some hacks and tricks and placeholders and stuff for anyone wanting to play with linguistics in their environment, but not wanting to commit to doing a language is what this section is. So
It's hard.
yeah.
I have tried. It is hard.
It's really difficult. Yeah, so starting out, visual languages are easier to construct. If you're working, chances are you're working on at least somewhat of a visual format, whether that be like a comic or just...
Or a book.
Or a book or anything. There's a really good chance that you don't need the actual spoken language, and having a visual language is a lot easier to do.
It's also one of those things where you can kind of... Because when you're constructing it, putting stuff on paper... down on paper is always going to be easier than just formulating it in your head. And I mean, some people are really good at doing things in their head. They don't generally need to write things down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to be doing something where you need to constantly be referencing what you've already done, you should write it down.
Right.
That's smart.
And so to do a visual language, and it's never going to be exact if you do it this way, but pretty much what you can do is you can take either just like the English alphabet, or if you want to get like a little bit more advanced, you could do like the Roman alphabet or something comparable that would be like a little bit more versatile. But you take an alphabet that you're very familiar with and you replace it with written characters. And then if there are any sound... See, this gets tricky because this also a little bit gets into the auditory language side of things. But if there are like any really common sounds or anything that's really specific, you can remove or add letters. TH is usually in a lot of languages is characterized as a single letter because it makes a specific sound. So you can take stuff like that and you can incorporate that into your alphabet. It doesn't have to be 26 letters, even if the alphabet that you're using for a majority of your reference is 26 letters. Yeah, and there are a lot of... I feel like a lot of it comes in for things like still movies and like games and stuff where they have a little bit more of an interactive component with the audience. Is where we see a lot of those, but there are also in books and stuff, you can get that. A good example of that would be like the Artemis Fowl things.
Yeah. You translated all the shit.
I did.
All the shit on the headers and the footers.
Because it's a real language, and like it was fun as a kid to like go through and learn how to... That's another bizarre, I know we said we weren't going to talk this much about written languages, but it's like a weird, fun thing I can do is read Colfer Fay Linguistics. I don't know what the language is called, but I can read it.
It's something.
So yeah, that's like a fun, and tabletop games have it also a lot.
Definitely D&D has several languages.
Yeah. They have like an alphabet code in them.
Yeah. And they have keys for like a lot of the different, for I think most of the common languages they have it down. I don't know how much for the the exotic languages.
The exotic languages do not have keys in the book.
Well, mostly because you're not supposed to actually know about them because they're beyond our thought processes.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude. But yeah.
And if you want to get into, if you're going to be experimenting with languages, it's also, oh god.
The dog's
I
here.
almost got knocked off the couch just now. And you can also, there's like some really out of the box stuff that you can do with visual languages as well. A really good example of that would be circular Gallifreyan.
Oh god.
Is a thing that you can learn how to read and write in, and it's crazy. And it's so pretty when you're done. It's hard to do.
It's very pretty. I was watching one of those tattoo shows once, and some girl came in to get a Doctor Who tattoo with her name in circular Gallifreyan, or something in circular Gallifreyan, and the tattoo artist was so like, there are so many circles.
Circles are like one of the hardest things you can tattoo.
Yeah.
Briefly in between, while I was transitioning from ghostwriting to like full out under my name freelancing, I took a few jobs where I was translating things into fictional languages for people to have tattooed, and I always heard back that tattoo artists were like pissed for all of the circular Gallifreyan work that I did. My friend had her son's name tattooed in circular Gallifreyan.
Aww, that's cute though.
It was pretty cute. The tattoo artist was not happy. But
well,
yeah.
That's how artists be.
Yeah.
I know. Believe me, I know.
But yeah, and if you want to get more into the auditory stuff, it's a good idea, typically, to borrow sound profiles of a language that would be comparable.
So the usual like sound profiles you're going to come across are the Romantic languages, so the French, Italian, Spanish sort of stuff. There's Germanic languages, so German, like Austrian, that sort of, like, is Russian considered a Germanic language?
I don't think
Is it considered a Scandinavian?
Yeah, I think it might be more of a Scandinavian language.
It does sound more like Scandinavian languages. So Scandinavian is like Norway, Sweden, Finnish, you know, the Nordic states. I think Russian, right? It's up there. It's one of the weird ones.
It's weird because all of the Russian that I know is from NADSAT, so I don't.
But yeah, so then I think like Russian and like Belarus and like Estonia, Latvia, all that. I think that might be a separate category. I have no idea what it's called.
Yeah.
But then there's also, you know, Eastern Asian languages. There's like Arabic. There's a lot of subcategories. There's whatever the fuck English is.
Right.
Because English is just a disaster.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so there's like a lot of different sound profiles that exist.
Yeah.
So if you're already basing like something off of somewhere else, which chances are you probably are, go to that influence first, because that's where you're gonna sort of get your most natural sound profile.
Yeah. And another tip, just if you're writing in something and you decide mid-project that you would like to have your own language for it, a good trick that I use a lot is I use placeholder languages. Where I choose the language that's closest to the sound profile I want, and I write all of what would eventually be a fictional language dialogue in just a foreign language.
Because then it does differentiate itself from the normal, what you're writing in.
Yeah, and it's easy to go back through and look and be like, these are the things that are going to need translated, and it's like a good starting point.
It sticks out because there's a bunch of red fucking squiggles in your Word document.
Yeah. It helps. If you're fluent in a second language, that would be the ideal thing, because then you also don't have to translate twice. You can just, like, go for it.
And you don't have to worry about if you're, if you are using, like, an online translator, that when you're building your own language off of it is not nearly as critical that you have a good translator.
Right.
Because as it turns out, doesn't always do the best job.
Yeah.
Because it is a machine.
That's true. So the main trick that I have for you guys, the main thing, is in deciding whether or not you want to do a fictional language, ask yourself whether or not it will contribute to the environment, because it adds an extra layer of depth, but if you can't use it in a way where it will be helpful, it might be better not to do it. And if you do use it, it's important to tie it into the world building.
Right.
Just, like, consider what kind of things the culture would need to communicate most regularly. Figure out, like, use religion to create idioms, just, like, tie culture in. And even if it doesn't get flat out explained in your work, it'll be something that your audience can think about later. Or something that future learners of your language can be really disturbed by.
Such as? That was so specific.
I had a breakthrough in High Valyrian last week that I didn't like.
Oh, no.
'Cause for those of you getting into some dark language stuff, Targaryens wed brother to sister to keep the bloodlines pure for many, many years, which is something that presumably they got the idea from Old Valyria. And it just occurred to me that there's probably a reason why the word for dad is the same as the word for uncle. It was one of those just, like, weird things as I was translating where it's like, what does cross-cousin mean? And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out all this stuff, and it's like, this is a weird... And then, like, I thought about it for a second, and it's like, oh,
it's the incest.
That's why it's weird to translate this.
Oh, this is why this is so horribly uncomfortable.
I got so on it. And I think the reason why... Because, it took me a really long time to figure it out, because, like, whenever it came up, it was usually Jaime and Cersei that were, like, the examples, so it's like, well, that's just, like, a weird Jaime and Cersei, and then it's like, oh, no.
No? That is not an isolated incident in Game of Thrones.
And it happens a lot in, like, languages, too, where you can, like, see the cultural influences, and sometimes they're not good influences, they're just there.
They're just definitely there, and you gotta take that bullet.
And it's like, like wedding toasts in Klingon translate to stuff like, may your blood scream. And you learn it idiomatically and you're like, yeah, sure. And then you're like, also, may your blood scream. But yeah, tie it into your world. For better and worse, because that's how language works.
Right. Because to think, not every part of a culture is good. I'm trying to think about American culture, and none of it's good. It's all pretty fucking bad. But, we have words that express that.
Right.
Because that's just how it fucking is in this hell of a world. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's also good, like, if you... I'm trying to...
If you,
Because, like, it's important no culture is perfect, and especially no culture started perfect. There's like always going to be some dark stuff in the past when you're talking about stuff on that scale.
Right.
So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
It's also, I think it's an interesting thing when you are tying it in to world building, so, you know, even today there are phrases that are outdated, but people don't think of them, like, it's just something people have always said.
Yeah.
So you don't think about them as, oh, has bad origins.
Right.
It's like phrases like off the reservation or Indian summer or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you stop and think about it, it's like, oh, that's racist. Oh, that's bad. So it's also an interesting thing if your world has had that and moved past it, do they still have those outdated phrases?
Right.
That could be hanging around, because that's another cultural thing, and it not only builds the current sort of culture, but it builds the past.
Right.
Also. It's two birds, one stone.
And it's a good character building thing too. I don't know why this popped into my head as the example, but it's like it's important to think about like who would and would not be aware of what's offensive.
Right.
A really good example of this is that like Harry Potter kind of dealt with like, swearing and insults. Really good way to get world building in there, because different cultures find different things to be like really offensive.
Right.
It's a thing. There's mudblood would be like the equivalent of a racial slur in Harry Potter, and like the first time it's dealt with, it's one of those things where it's like Hermione has a really tough time with it because it's being directed at her the first time that it comes up, and Harry's like horrified that they have like wizarding racial slurs, and Hagrid's horrified that children are saying them, and Ron's just heard the word, and he's like, and it's because even though he doesn't come from like a economically privileged position, he has a very pure bloodline, and he's like never even stopped to think, oh hey, this word's offensive. Right. Like he never used it, but like it's obvious in the scene where you kind of find out what it means, that it doesn't get under his skin the way that it does for everybody else in the room. Right.
Which is good world building.
It's good world building, and it was like a good character building moment for Ron, because he learned something.
Oh, Ron, you're learning.
Where he's like, this offensive word is offensive?
Oh, what? No, shit.
But like some people just, there is ignorance, and it's like, they addressed it in Harry Potter pretty young.
You're gonna, you're gonna have an ignorant character in your story.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
That's absolutely for sure.
Play into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, insults are like a fun one because my favorite thing is like in Game of Thrones, they call Viserys the Cart King, because Daenerys takes his horse. They get into a fight, and Daenerys takes his horse. And then to try and make it up to him, she's like, we should give the horse back. And everyone's like, no, he was a dick. He doesn't get a horse. Because horse lords, obviously, like, the best thing you can do is ride a horse. Right. So she allows him, so he doesn't have to walk the whole way back to Vaes Dothrak. She gets a seat for him in the cart, which is like an insult in Dothraki culture, because like walking, at least you learn something, but like riding in a cart is a thing that women and children do. And he's like, so she gets him this ride in this cart so he doesn't have to walk the whole way, and she tells him that it's like a good thing, and then people behind his back are calling him Cart King because it's like this huge insult, and it's like, it's good. But the only Dothraki word that he knows is king, so he's like, they're finally giving me the respect that I deserve. And it's just good. It's like a good... And then, like, Daenerys is really nervous whenever it happens, because she's like, one day he's gonna find out that this is bad.
She don't have to worry about that.
She doesn't have to worry about that. Yeah, and, like, in Klingon, Like, one of the gravest insults that you can tell someone is that their mother has a smooth forehead, and it's like, there's just good culture to be found in insults.
One of my favorite things, it's not a foreign language, but I mean, it's like a language this dog needs to learn so he stops punching people. But it's like Shakespearean insults. They almost sound foreign.
They do, because they don't make, like, a ton of sense.
Yeah, they don't check out
context.
But, like, they do, like, in the time, they were, like, made a lot. And it's like, it's one of those things where, since the Shakespearean insult does have a formula, Bubba Boy, that you can, like, they make, like, the insult builders, which, like, I remember we did that in, like, drama.
It was fun.
And did that in, like, in like, English.
Yeah.
Let's switch places so my dog stops punching you. You can punch me instead. The new Shakespearean insult is a Bubba Boy.
But yeah. I'm trying to think. They're just, like, they're good insults.
Insults are fun. That's the first thing. The first thing anyone wants to learn so here's a story, that you know, but I want to tell it on the podcast. So the first thing anyone wants to learn in a foreign language is insults and swear words.
Right.
I have family over in Norway, and we have, like, younger, not cousins, but, you know, it's easier to call them cousins than figure out what the actual relationship is. Thanks, Harley. But so they're, like, in grade school, basically. And so when my sister went over, 1 year with my mom, she put on Dragon Force for them, because he really likes rock music.
Yeah.
But she found the only version she could find of Through the Fire and the Flames was a live version, and so when they started playing it, they were like, "Are you ready to fucking go?" And she was like, oh no, and so then later she went downstairs after he went to bed and was talking to his dad, and she was like, yeah, I was showing him the song, but there was like a bunch of swear words in it, but I don't think he got them. And his dad was like, "Oh no, he knows all the swear words in English already."
Of course.
Of course. And my sister was like horrified. And it was like that wasn't us, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Swearing and insults are just fun to know.
They're fun to know. They're fun to world build with. It's just good.
It's just good and a good time. Because everyone likes to be mad, and everyone likes to say things when they're mad.
There's also a fun thing where you can make our idioms into swear words.
Oh, yeah?
Or, like, have negative connotation. And I was actually talking... So... I was talking about Harry Potter, if you can imagine.
What?
I was talking about Filch.
Yeah.
And he's a squib.
Right.
Which is, like, part, obviously, of, like, the English idiom. But it's, like, a term in Harry Potter.
He's a squib.
A squib.
Squib. Harley. Squib.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, if you... just moving... right into the next thing. If you do fun stuff like that, it can be really good, but don't explain it.
Right.
Like, we're explaining it here on the podcast because we're trying to give you advice, or it should feel organic in your world, and giving the reader a bunch of exposition generally isn't a good thing. Like, if you have to explain where every saying comes from in the world, it's much better to just let them absorb it however much they want.
Right.
There are a lot of, like, Westerosi idioms that they just throw into the show, and you just kind of get used to the way that they speak, and then if you're interested, you can go learn more about the origins.
Right.
Or even just if you watch long enough, you pick up on stuff that isn't that hard to figure out.
Right. It's one of those things where not every unique thing needs a paragraph of exposition to explain it. Because your readers are smarter than that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more fun if it's just like, oh, it's more immersive. That's the word I'm looking for. It's more immersive if you just let it be without it taking over.
It can be good. And I think one of the... And it gives something back, I feel like, to your really dedicated readers.
Yeah.
Because you can, like, pick up on stuff after you've already read a thing so many times or watched a thing so many times.
Right.
And language is a good way to introduce stuff like that if you want to have, like, revisiting potential. Capacity, that's the word.
There you go.
I don't know English well enough to be doing a podcast about language. So yeah, that's like a fun thing. And you can also, like you can lay down hints about stuff, but then not string everything together. I think the one exception, obviously, for me, would be Series of Unfortunate Events. Because when the series starts, the youngest sibling is still a baby, and Lemony Snicket kind of did like a baby language for her. That's like an approximation of, but one of the ongoing things of the series is that her siblings can translate the baby language, and it gets translated to you but Lemony Snicket has a way of doing things unconventionally where you'd be like, normally don't do this, but he gets away with it because he's Lemony Snicket.
Right.
I feel...
Lemony Snicket has a very unique way of storytelling that lets him get away with a lot of shit.
Yeah. And I feel like we talked about this a little bit also somewhere else, where it's like, normally you treat the audience with the assumption that they know what you're talking about, because those are the people you're going to attract. But as a kid's series, Lemony Snicket did a really good job of explaining stuff to the audience without them he did it in a way that was humorous, so you didn't feel like you were being talked down to.
Right. It was humorous without being condescending.
Even if you were caught up on the, like, premise or on the word. Series of Unfortunate Events teaches a lot of words.
Yeah.
It's like, but the definitions are humorous, so you, like, it's not ever not entertaining.
Right. It's always worth reading the description.
It's good.
Let me just think it.
And then, I wish I could remember what the thing was. I wish I could remember, like, the word, or that I had thought to look up the passage, or whatever, but he does a thing where it's like, in this situation, this word means this. Where he kind of, like, he steps back and he's like, normally a word means this, but in this situation...
a word means this.
And it's good. It's something he does a lot. That was really good. And it's something that I really appreciate about the Netflix adaptation of Series of Original Events, because it has the narrator, and they took a lot of quotes and cues from the books on when to explain words to the audience.
Right.
In a way that's still good.
It's nice.
Yeah. My other suggestion is have a linguist somewhere involved in the language process. And this can mean either you can be a linguist, you can study language, that is a valid choice, and it's very interesting. But if you don't want to do that, it's important that you have either someone that you can consult with or someone in your story who can kind of describe things in a way where you as the writer will get a pass on stuff. Having like a translator in there.
So my first thought of this is Atlantis.
Mm-hmm.
Because the main character, Milo, is a translator. Like, he studied, like, the Atlantean culture, and all that. So when you get to Atlantis, and they're speaking Atlantean, you immediately have a conduit of someone who's going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's also really great because it's done very humorously, where he has a fucking terrible accent trying to speak it, because it's a dead language.
Right.
Because obviously, of course.
Of course.
So the actual pronunciation of things, as much as you can approximate it, is probably still nowhere near close to what it actually is.
Right.
So that's sort of always my initial thought of when you have a translator on your team. It's like, it's the Milo of the team.
Right.
And
it's good. It's a good thing to have.
It is. It's also one of those things where if you don't have a linguist on the like main team of people, I'm thinking like so in our D&D group, because people come from different backgrounds and stuff, and people know different languages. It's like if you have to speak to someone specifically, you can sort of choose a language that you and the other person know, and the rest of them don't, and that's a good way to have private conversations,
right?
Without having to be like, we gotta like go sneak off and do this and blah blah blah, sort of thing.
Yeah. And this actually, to tie in to the quote that we had for the High Valyrian, it's something you can do for characters in stories as well. It's not revealed until pretty late in season 3 that Daenerys is fluent in High Valyrian.
Right.
Like, it makes sense that she would be, but you don't really know, because she had a very non-conventional upbringing. And so it's one of those things where when she's trying to deal with the like slave traders, they are all talking in front of her in Giscari. It's essentially in High Valyrian, and she lets them use a translator for her throughout like most of the season, you know, and they insult her a bunch, and they're like talking about her behind her back in front of her face in a language that she knows, but she doesn't want them to know how much she knows, so she just never admits that she can speak anything but the common tongue. And
until
then,
she fucking kills it.
Yeah, until she kills, and then like
it's one of the best scenes in the show.
And in the quote, you know, Valyrian is my mother tongue, because they give her, it's like right after they hand her like the whip for her army that she just bought, and she's commanding the army in High Valyrian, and you can see the look of dread on the slaver's face, you know, and he's trying to he doesn't notice her giving the commands at first, because he's like trying to get the dragon down, and the dragon won't come, and he's like all upset because he gave away a whole army for this dragon and he can't get it to do what he wants. And this like common girl that he doesn't know anything about, you know, he's like, how do I make it come to me? And the translator translates it, and Daenerys turns around and she looks him dead in the face, and she's like, Zeldrizi Buzdari Ixos Daor, which translates to a dragon is not a slave. And the color drains from his face, and he's like, you speak Valyrian?
God! Oh, it's so good!
And she introduces herself as, like, the last Targaryen and the mother of dragons, and she's like, Valyrian is my mother tongue. And it was such a good moment, you know?
And then that's also where she orders the dragon to set him on fire, right?
Yeah.
And it's like...
And again, because those were like her two coolest lines of the show just about are in that episode, and neither one is in English, because the command for fire is dragon fire in Valyrian. So it was good, and that's like, and it was a turning point too, because you can see like her counselors also didn't know that she was smart enough to fake not knowing the language,
right?
Up until that point,
like
good.
Oh shit. Anyway, that's why I say why Daenerys should win the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Daenerys has got to win.
She knock on that wood.
I can't have...
Knock on that wood.
So...
But before we get upset about that...
Yeah. And it's also good, because she also has had multiple translators throughout the show.
Yeah.
Masande, she actually is the translator that she meets there in Astapor, and she's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, she's
she
great.
Speaks 19 languages, and she's just like this cute little nerd.
She's so cute.
She's
adorable.
They don't have enough nerds in Game of Thrones. It's pretty much like her and Tyrion and Sam.
Yeah.
That's all the nerds.
I was like, don't leave Sam out.
I'm not gonna leave Sam out. Sam is like the ultimate... Sam is like if you put a Dungeons and Dragons player into a Dungeons and Dragons setting,
God.
and it's good.
He's so fun. He's so cute. Sam's so cute. I love Sam.
Because not only is he like a giant book nerd, but he's also likes books because he likes feeling like a wizard, which is just like objectively the best.
God.
Fucking Sam.
Adorable.
But yeah, linguists are good. Or if you... And there's an obvious... Especially with the whole, like, xenolinguistics, science fiction stuff, there's a very easy workaround if you're in speculative fiction.
Mm-hmm.
You can make up some kind of translating device, also.
Right.
Is a thing. Like, acknowledge that there are other languages pretty much all the time when you're doing an entire world, but you don't have to ever use any of this stuff. The Babelfish, obviously, is like a really great example of what you do when you want to be like accurate but not deal with language that much.
There's also, the universal translator that they have in Star Trek.
Right.
Which is just, it's fucking... Was it like you had to hear like one sentence in the language or whatever, and then it snaps into action? Something like that. It's cool. It's cool because it does sort of give you like a momentary glimpse of what's going on, but then it's like, okay, we're not doing that for the rest of the show.
Right.
It works.
It's like a nice workaround. And then also, this is just one of those things where it's like, obviously no one ever gets to use all of their skills all the time, but if you have a character with a certain skill set, it's cool to show it off sometimes. It was one of the few things that I think they did really, really well in the Star Trek movies reboot thing, is because, like, Uhura is a linguist, and every now and then they let her translate stuff on screen, and it's like, we get to see her being awesome, doing her job
She
for
gets
a
to
change.
She gets to do her job?
Yeah.
Huh?
Crazy.
What?
This whole crazy concept.
Just this weird man.
Insane. But yeah, that's a good thing.
It is. If you got languages, show them off. If you don't want to do that, come up with a workaround.
Yeah.
Just make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good. And there really is, when you're looking at character building and stuff, it's just, language is a very important thing because it defines how we communicate with each other and what you are communicating to your audience. So it's just something to be mindful of when you're working, and especially when you're working with something as experimental as a fictional language.
And it's one of the things, too, where also remember that language is never fixed. Mm-hmm. Language is always evolving. We were at Market District for Valentine's Day. Yesterday. We were picking out our cake, and we saw the acronym SWAC on a cake, and we were like, what the fuck does that mean? What is that? Yeah. And it means sealed with kiss, and I was like, oh, that's cute. And then I was like, who the fuck did that? When did this happen?
That's bad. Don't like that.
Swag. We did not get the swag cake.
Correct.
But, yeah, it's just like one of those things where you're always going to be coming across new words. Because it's not like somebody, like, there are very few people that know the entirety of the English language.
Oh, yeah.
Or any language, even the one that you speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll see a word and I'll be like, no.
Yeah.
That's not correct. So, if you are introducing, like, new language things, your characters can be learning it, too. It's fun.
It's good.
Just have fun with it. Because if you're doing a whole language, you're not doing it because you have to.
Right.
You're doing it for fun.
And that's important. And it's also important, this is something that we see a lot in English. There's, like, a lot of bastardization of language everywhere. And it's something, like, the whole text phenomenon.
I like phenomenon.
Is just... It's gotten to the point where, like, slang and abbreviation has become almost a language of its own. Language is more of an entity than it is of anything else because it's constantly evolving and changing and to reflect the times and the culture.
Right.
It's something that I really wanted to do when we were doing, like, the fun game for you, because sometimes, even though NADSAT is a slang language...
a slangwage.
A slangwage,
if you will.
Yeah, even though that's already a bastardized form of English, Alex goes that extra step sometimes, where it's, like, there are words that just, like, he specifically will say. One of my, like, because Malchick is one of the terms, but he'll go as far as to go to, like, Malchicky wikis or just Chicky wicks, and it's like you not only have to keep up with NADSAT, but because Alex is narrating, you have to keep up with just bizarre, weird linguistic tics that are specific to him.
Right. Because as it turns out, people fuck with language all the time. That's how it goes. Even with things that don't need it.
Yeah.
Harley has been through so many name changes.
Yeah.
He has so many nicknames.
Harley's got all the nicknames.
His first name was Harley Davidson, and now he's Da Bubba Da Boy.
Mm-hmm.
That's his most current nickname. It has changed so much. And it's fun. Because people do that.
Right.
If you have, like, a quirky character, they're probably going to be a little quirkier with the language that they speak.
Right.
Because that's how people are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you want to do, is you want to, like, capture the essence of people, essentially, when you're writing. You want it to come across as authentic, and sometimes that means doing things that you really shouldn't be doing.
Because they're
with
weird.
Language, yeah.
And speaking of weird, it looks like there's one last bullet point.
Yes.
On here, Kat.
There is one last bullet point on here. I want to talk about Adventures.
The podcast.
The podcast.
Available on Stupid Export. We're getting into the final act of the first campaign of Adventures, so we did that like 2 years ago. Which is weird to think about, but it's true.
Yeah. I want to talk about the podcast, and then I want to talk about, like, one of our side sessions, and the book.
Because there's a book!
They all tie into this next bullet point here. So one of the things that happened in Adventures is we were on a recon mission. We were supposed to be recruiting people, and Bradley decided to take the time to learn another language.
Right.
That and unlike fictional languages or commercial languages or any of the languages that we've talked about today, this was an on-the-spot thing for a language that literally did not exist until I rolled high enough to learn it.
In case you haven't listened to Adventures, for some reason, Adventures is a tabletop game that my partner and his brother created, and we play very regularly. Radley is in the first campaign, Radley is our resident smart person. We brought her on board specifically to be a smart person, because none of us had an intelligence stat, and I had a point of 1, because I was a dog.
Yeah. That's how Dogs are sometimes.
Also, the entirety of V1 Adventures pretty much was entirely improvised on the spot.
Right.
Almost entirely.
Yeah.
Kat just decided she wanted to learn a new language, and our DM had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because you would.
Right. Because that was, like, part of the thing was that, like, we were having trouble, like, reading stuff and understanding stuff in the city. So it was one of those things where it's like, I can find a book that, like, can translate some of this stuff. I can learn, like, common phrases and we'll have an easier time navigating. And then there was, like, a class going on because I got, like, an 18.
Yeah.
I rolled, like, really low to find books, but then I rolled really high to find language books, so there was, like, a how-to class going on at the library
right.
at the time. So that one came up on the spot, and then Alan accidentally triggered our other language because Franza wrote a letter to their significant other, but Franza cannot read.
Franza cannot read. Speaks common, but cannot read it.
Yeah.
So you had to make a hieroglyphic language, a pictorial language.
Yeah.
That the dogs of Roughsport use.
And so in adapting it into
didn't know it was called Ruffian.
It is.
It's so good!
Fun fact, and this is in the true vein of the Adventures experience, that was actually an autocorrect error that I thought, I don't even remember what I was originally calling the language, but I went to type it up and it was like, did you mean ruffian? And it's like, I sure as fuck did. That's what it's called now. Yeah, that's what they speak in Roughsport now.
Ruffian.
And I have this... And this
it's
is
great,
kind of
it's dog jokes all the way down.
It really is. They have a bunch of cocktails in Roughsport that are just like dog puns of other cocktails. And it...
What? Hold on, what are they?
So here's a dangerous thing, and this is more of a collaboration issue, I guess, than a language issue, except for it'll tie in, I promise. In adapting the... We had like a fun thing where it was like... Alan tricked me into writing an adventures book.
I did.
Alan tricked Ben and I both into saying yes to the adventures book because he implied heavily with both of us that the other one had suggested and or approved of it, which was not the case.
No!
But it's too late now, we're in it. And in adapting it, I got to... they gave me too much power in adapting a podcast. I have too much say over what goes into the canon for the books.
You're the only one that can do it, Kat.
So sometimes I'll just be, and it's fun because Ben like improvised this world on the spot, and then I got like really into the nitty gritty of like how stuff functions, so I could try and stay authentic. And then I realized like. I was pretty far into the second draft before I realized it would be more authentic if no one knew for sure. So there's like some stuff that is canon that I got approved, and then there's some stuff where it's like, you know what, no, I'm writing the book, I have the authority, this is going into the canon. And a lot of that comes in with Franza, because there was like no canon anything for Roughsport.
Yeah. Roughsport was a name I came up with on the spot for the town Franza was from, and it made Will so angry. Because Roughsport is near no water.
Yeah. It's technically in a different dimension.
What?
Roughsport isn't like a city that you can go to.
Oh shit!
In San Fran-san.
The world of San Fran. We were talking the other night, and Ben was like, "What's San Fran-san from? Is that like a soulbound thing?" I was like, "That's the name of your adventures world, babe. You did that. That's yours."
That's good. Yeah, Ben will now. It was so weird because when we did the. I don't remember. I think it was after V2. I think it was when we were doing the Christmas thing. But Ben asked me a geography question about San Fran.
Yeah, he did.
And it just like. It was so weird because it's like, this is not my creation, but I've become so much a part of the, like,
canon.
World process behind the scenes for the book. And now I've gotten, like, finally in this last draft, I got more comfortable with making executive decisions, where instead of asking, like, does this go against the canon? Is this something I'm allowed to say? It's just like, this is canon now, because I said so.
Because I said, well, isn't that really just what the Adventures canon is?
That's, yeah, pretty much. I just feel comfortable enough now that I can contribute to the canon.
It's really funny because, you send Ben these detailed emails asking these so specific questions, and you ask for character names, and he's like, okay, babe, give me some letters! And we just sit there for like 20 minutes, and I give him a list of letters.
It's a lot of fun, because Ben and I have, on our own, contributed so much to the Adventures canon. Since this book started, it was like his world, and then, because I had to get stuff done, it was like my own separate take on the world for a little bit, and melding them together for this last draft of the book. It's really weird, because I haven't actually, like, sat down to collaborate much at all with Ben on this. But there are just these weird things. There's a character in there named Handlerei, which is Handel's ice cream in German, because I had forgotten what I had, for whatever reason, I thought that Handel's ice cream was like part of the like title or something. So just because I couldn't remember what his actual name was, I translated it in German for one of the drafts of the book when I didn't have the reference sheets. And then I was talking to Ben about it, and he's like, I like that. No one knows that it's Handel's ice cream.
It's secret Handel's ice cream.
Handel's ice cream. And it's just like, it's bizarre absurdity. But I've made a lot of like linguistic choices.
Yeah.
In this last draft where we get into like the nitty gritty of linguistics. And Ruffian is one of my favorite examples of this. It's still in development, but Ruffian is a fully functional pictorial language.
That's so exciting.
It's I had like a glyph system for it, and it's like, this is good. It's that thing I did where I like related it back to an alphabet, and it's like, this is how you translate this, and but then it was like, no, it needs to be weirder, and it got real abstract, and it's and in true Adventures fashion, there's like some stuff that that really shouldn't be in there, because it's like, it's all symbols and shapes and stuff, but then every now and then there's like an emoji. So like,
oh, it kills me. It's so good.
Because that, I figured, was what Adventures was about, and specifically what Franza was about.
That's what Franz is all about.
But Franz
is all about emojis.
There's the Adventures canon for you that you didn't know for the day, is that Ruffsport is not a village you can go to.
I love that.
It's another dimension, technically. You can get there, obviously. Some dogs can get there.
Some dogs can.
But
Special dogs.
And Landrian is a fun one to work with also. I haven't gotten much into the language part of it in developing my own language, but this is a good example of where using placeholders and stuff can be really good. Because I've just been writing Landrian in French until I have time to come back and translate stuff as much as needs translated. Because Lumen is the city of light.
Right.
So,
it's all French.
It's like a fun...
It's French all the way down!
joke. But yeah, so we have some, like a little bit... Oh, and the other thing I was going to talk about is the spinoff. It was just like a small thing, but before we decided to record the Kingdom Hearts thing, there was like that one thing we ended up in, like we were talking about stuff in French, and Ben was like, you can't translate this, but then he said something in French, so I said something back to him in French, and he looked so mad at me. He was just like, your character's not smart enough to know that. I was like, it was one of my favorite moments from any of like our spin-off adventures.
Oh my god.
Language is good.
He's just a Taurus. Oh my god. It's funny because like we were like, because so few people, like everybody took Spanish, which, in all fairness, probably more useful.
Yeah.
But like we were like, none of us took French we had a French class together.
There were 12 people in our French class.
Very good. But then like, so we took French together, and then Ben also took French.
Yeah.
And like the odds of us all being the ones who took French, it's just funny.
Yeah, it's fun.
If anyone wants a fun linguistic exercise, go look up our favorite Christmas song, La Legend de Saint Nicolas.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
It's great. There's lots of child murder and brine.
Mm-hmm. Like all the best
And magic
Christmas
asses.
songs. I'm so mad. Some of the translations don't talk about the part where he sits on them, and that's like the best. That's my favorite part.
The best part.
But yeah, so this Conficturalinguistics is not a real thing, but we talked about it for a long time.
We did. We said some words. We did some things. And now we're gonna end the episode.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening. Go learn some languages, make some languages, speak some languages, probably your own.
Yeah.
This has been Unsolicited Advice. I'm Bubblegum.
I'm Toxic.
And we'll see you next time.